Aloha and welcome everyone. You're watching AWN TableTalk live on Facebook. My name is Crystal Niehoff and I'm the owner and commander here at Army Wife Network.
Hi everybody, I'm Wendy Baird Packard. AWN TableTalk is broadcasting live from Schofield Barracks, Hawaii, and today is Hawaiian Shirt Day.
Yay.
And we are so glad that you joined us today.
Hi, I'm Tracy Hargis. Let us know that you're watching by liking or commenting on this video, and let us know where you're watching from.
Tracy's handling our Facebook page today and monitoring comments and questions. We will be answering your questions about deployment and reintegration. So if you have a question for us, go ahead and begin posting them in the comment section below, and we'll work to get them on the air.
So viewers, we would love it if you would like and share this video with your friends.
And let's see, there we are. We are on the air. Awesome. Okay. So before starting our table talk about deployment and reintegration, let's cover the important topic of OPSEC. What is OPSEC? OPSEC stands for Operational Security. The basic meaning is simply denying an adversary information that could harm you or benefit them, and that would include harming your soldier or benefiting the adversary. So basically, how do you observe OPSEC? First of all, don't give out troop movement or location, the where are they at, where will they be going, who, no names, ranks, units, etc. No dates, times of flights, landings, or takeoffs. And the reason behind this is to keep them safe. We all want to keep our service members safe. So that means no sharing of this information through phone, email, Facebook, Twitter, to protect yourself and your family and your soldier. One instance of this was several years ago. My husband had gone into a fast food restaurant, and the gal behind the counter noticed the patch on his uniform and said, "Oh, you're going to be deploying with my boyfriend." And they chatted for a little bit, and she says, "Yeah," and she gave a date that had not been released of when they would be leaving. Turns out that the boyfriend happened to be an aide to the commander and gave out important information in which she released in a very public way at a fast food restaurant that she was working at. So this is just one of the many instances where we could break OPSEC. Do you have any other instances to share?
Yeah, I just think OPSEC, we don't realize sometimes when we post that our soldier's leaving, or that we are alone, or we miss our soldier, or we're going to be on our own for a couple months, that's actually breaking OPSEC as well. You came from Fort Carson, as I'd mentioned before, and many times there would be large deployments, 4,000 and 5,000 soldiers. And what would happen is the Facebooks would start becoming flooded with information about how they were going to miss their soldier, or how their soldier was going to be gone for a long time. And what that did is it started to alert people that were not so great. Thieves, people would start breaking into houses because they knew the houses were unprotected. And so just even something as simple as that is saying, wow, I'm going to really miss him when he's gone for 9 months, is kind of breaking that OPSEC and puts you out there for all kinds of different challenges. So right. Just things like that.
And another thing that we've ran across is, you get excited when your soldier is getting ready to come home, and you want to share that good news on Facebook with your friends or in a comment in a group. And that is just, don't announce even a general date. So if they're coming home in April, don't say, hey, he's coming home April 5th or in a week, or, don't give out flight information. He'll be arriving on United, you do that for their safety, the safety of their unit, and the safety of the families that would go to welcome them home.
And you certainly don't want to delay their trip home. And that has happened to us, where the soldiers were put on an aircraft and had to sit and wait, and then were delayed a whole week. And our understanding is because there was information that got out about that flight. So we don't want that to happen either.
Good point.
Yeah.
Okay, so now with that covered, again, if you're tuning in and you have a soldier coming home, we're excited for you, but please don't post a date or time, or even that you got a week left, or you're counting down the days, 3 days. That just is too specific, and you could potentially put others at risk. However, if your soldier is home, we would love to know and say welcome home. So you feel free to comment in our feed, and we would love to share that even on air once they're safely home. So with that covered, let's go ahead and begin our table talk discussion. We're chatting today about deployment and reintegration. This topic, or possibly, could cover a few different AWN Table Talk discussions, and we're breaking it down. We thought we'd start with the beginning. What else? Prep and what to expect in the days and weeks leading up to a deployment. First of all, one thing they may do is disconnect before leaving, or you may feel that you may just feel yourself disconnecting. It's hard to know that you're going to be separated. So how did you... First of all, let's go ahead and kind of share our experience with deployments or separations, so that we kind of know. For me personally, I have not experienced a long deployment, which is funny. In the military, that we say, oh, they're only gone a few months. You know, where else do you hear that, oh, we're thankful they're only gone 3 or 4 months. But we've also geo-batched, you know, where he was in one geographic location and I was in the other for 6 months. And then there's TDYs and trainings. So that is where I approach this from. How about you, Wendy?
So we've had 1 long deployment in the Army. We had 3 when he was in the Navy. And it was different. When he was in the Navy, I was his girlfriend, and so I didn't think a whole lot about it. I wasn't as invested in it. But I do know that each and every time we did have the same process where he would start to really disconnect and almost to a certain point get a little mean, a little snappy, and a little bit hard to get close to. And I know Tracy and I had talked about it, that seems to be very common. I think the one thing I can say is you have to remember we're all going through it together. We sort of talked about that before last time. But it is kind of common for them. And I saw that in my soldier quite often. And he had to compartmentalize. He had to start thinking about his job. He had to start focusing and disconnecting. When you know you're going to be away from the people you love the most, that's never an easy transition. And so it's harder because they're going away from everything they know and love, their home, their family. We get to stay put and stay a little connected. But it seems to be they have to start getting in that frame of mind pretty early on, you know, a couple weeks for us. How about you, Tracy?
It's the same with me. They will disconnect. I would say before deployment comes up, like a couple weeks maybe before deployment is when you need to do things with your family together, because they will start disconnecting and they do get snappy. They're getting their things ready, and when they go to work every day, it's all prepare. So my suggestion is to do some things long before the deployment is going to start, because they will start disconnecting and not being so close. And that is hard, but it's something that you're going to go through. So,
I think the way to think about it is it's they don't love you, it's they love you so much.
Yes.
That's why they're disconnecting that little bit. It's not because they don't care, it's because they care so much that they want to kind of get their feelings in check so they can do their job.
Right. That is a hard thing on both ends, you know, for them. They're doing their job. Like I know my husband, they want to deploy, strangely as it sounds, but that's their job, and it's part of going with their unit. So they have those mixed emotions and the guilt. You know, they want to do their job, but they also feel tied to their families, and they want to be home with their families and be able to take care of their family and their loved ones. And so that's a difficult. And then we may even find ourselves either becoming overly attached or disconnecting ourselves. I kind of do that. I kind of start to disconnect, and I will find myself just maybe not being as engaged with them. And so for me, that's a way of preparing my heart for them to leave. So.
And I think we all have different routines when our spouse is home and when our spouse isn't. And so some of us, when we know the deployment's coming, we're just ready to get into that new routine. Let's get started because you just want to get it over with. And so you kind of start mentally preparing as well. I know you've done multiple deployments. Do you start to kind of get into deployment mode before?
Definitely do. And also another thing I want to say to go along with this is when they do leave, don't make it so hard on them when they do leave. I know you're going to be sad and everything, but you're probably going to bawl. But the thing about it is be strong for them so that they can go on their mission and go ahead and do what they're supposed to do. If they see you so distraught, it's going to cause a
lot of guilt.
A lot of guilt on them. So, send them off happy. Try to send them off happy so they don't have to worry about you and that they can do their mission.
Some people, my husband doesn't particularly care for me to go to where he's deploying from. Like he's okay if we stop somewhere else and I said goodbye, or if some people don't like to want you to go to the airport with them or things like that. So that's a conversation you have to have where it's going to be the easiest to say goodbye.
Yes.
Go that way.
Yeah, and every family is different. So find the routine that works for you at that time, because it may be different from time to time, you know. And what works for your kids? Do you feel that they would do better to say goodbye at the house? Or maybe you feel that it would be better to take them somewhere away from the house so that's not a memory for them, So make that a happy time. But also understand that, and this is kind of a side note, but understand that your children are going to grieve too. The deployment for all members of the family is a grieving process, and you will go through the 5 steps of grieving. So understand that your child, even the youngest, they go through their different steps of grieving, and sometimes they're going to be angry or act out or revert back to some younger behaviors. That is actually a common occurrence, is for your children to revert back. Maybe they were potty trained and dad leaves, and the chaos of it's a different, you have to get to a new normal. And so during that transition, maybe the first day or 2 or 3 or a week, it's not as big a deal. But pretty soon dad's gone, and maybe you're Skyping, and that's a little odd. Here's dad on the screen, but he's not here to play with me anymore. They feel mom is sad with dad gone. And so they may revert to bedwetting or wetting their pants or throwing tantrums that they hadn't, that they had kind of outgrown. Teenagers may get clingy, or they may become distant leading up to deployment and in the days after. So those are things to understand that, and each time they're going to be different. No deployment is going to look the same. So your kids may, you could have 2 kids, and one may have really handled the last deployment well. You're thinking they're going to be the one that's going to be the rock in this deployment. And then you find they actually are the ones that kind of melt, and or they both melt. And so just understand they have feelings, a lot of emotions they're going through too. It's not you, it's not dad, it's not the Army or the military branch. It's the situation. And so just support each other through it, all the ups and downs. So okay, so Laura asks, my hubby is getting ready to deploy for 9 months, and he's become really distant and standoffish. We kind of talked about that. And our daughter, from our daughter and I don't want him to leave like this help. And again, there's not really a lot you can do. I think probably the biggest thing is to be supportive, understand that they're going to be like that, and try to,
I think what we do is I give him his space. He needs a space. I give him a space, like
And then
Tracy
when he
said.
comes around,
Yes.
then
Like
when
Tracy
he comes
said.
around,
Yes.
then, yeah.
Because they are so focused on the preparation, getting their
Right.
gear, getting their
Yeah.
soldiers in line. There's so much to do. And so my husband feels a little rushed. And so once he can get what he needs done, then he's
Yes.
able to come back and connect a little more with us.
Right.
But not nagging him and giving him the space and just gently supporting him usually makes it a little better, understanding that they're loving you a lot, not pushing you away. And that'll make a big difference.
Right. Right. It's actually, and oddly, it's a positive in a way because it just shows their love. They're feeling
about
guilty.
it that way for sure.
So
Put it in that
before we
perspective.
move on to our next point, let's do a few shout outs. Shout out to the 5th Ranger Training Battalion in North Georgia. Hi, Sharita.
Woohoo!
Amber is watching from Fort Bragg.
Nice.
Hi, Amber. So glad y'all are tuning in. Sharita says, love your shirts. Thank you.
Yes.
We thought it'd be fun to have Hawaiian shirt days. So, okay, next point is get your ducks or papers in order pre-deployment. So, Wendy, what would that look like?
You have to start with your POAs or power of attorneys. It is so important to get power of attorneys before your spouse leaves. You can get them after, but it sure is hard. And it's one of those things that you can go to JAG, or your unit might be doing a pre-deployment fair, and they might have them there and ready available. And JAG can advise you on what you need. So we have property and we have vehicles, we had student loans, we have deers. So we needed several different powers of attorney. And so JAG was able to help us and recommend what we needed. And I used them often. Even just to change our cable one time, I needed a power of attorney because my husband's name was listed first. So getting that in order. Then the second piece would have an emergency plan and have an emergency notebook where everyone knows where it is. So my emergency notebook was bright pink and it went on top of my refrigerator. My neighbor knew where it was. It had all my POAs, all my emergency contacts, and who was to take my child until help could come. So if my spouse is deployed and God forbid I had a car accident and I'm unconscious, who can pick my child up from school? And there has to be a legal contract for that, or the state can intervene. So you need to have a power of attorney. You need to have your friend who's your emergency contact with a power of attorney that can take over your child. And that person needs to know your emergency plan. So they need to know where that folder is. They need to know who to call, how to get that emergency. For me, my sister-in-law would have come, and they need to know how to get in touch with her and get her to where I am. So those things are just really basic first things. Get your power of attorneys and get your emergency plan and get that notebook where other people know where it is.
So is there a checklist somewhere, or will your unit walk you through what paperwork, what needs to be what we need to get in order before our spouse leaves?
Yes and no. It depends on what unit you're in.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say too. If you're in this really great unit that's really on it, it's there for you.
I mean, we, my husband was Special Forces, and they had this whole, I mean, you did everything, everything, all the way down to the funeral and everything.
Right.
But, and then some units, they don't get too much into that. Maybe your husband would fill out the paperwork where you don't even know that he filled out the paperwork. That happens a lot. And they may have some paperwork on file themselves at the unit. But no, it just depends on what unit you're in and how far they go. Go to your FRG meetings before deployments, because a lot of times they'll tell you all these things at the FRG meetings and let you know what you do need to do and how you do need to prepare with the paperwork and all. Any emergency plans or whatever. So.
And a good resource is Military One Source or Army One Source. So you can, I'm pretty sure there's checklists on there, pre-deployment checklists. So I would check there. And when you get your power of attorney from JAG, usually they have a checklist, not of all the paperwork, but of everything you need for the power of attorney. And there are also, and I believe Wendy touched on this, different types of power of attorney.
Yes.
So make sure and it would be good to go in and actually talk to someone at JAG, which can kind of walk you through that and make sure that you're covered before your spouse leaves. Because once they're deployed, it becomes hard to cover those things, and you may need them. And some of the lists, like you had said, cable, which is another reason why, as much as possible, even you don't have deployment in your future yet, it'll come probably. I'm on everything with my husband. Car titles, car pay. Well, we don't have car payments, but cable, telephone, internet, all that stuff. I'm on that with him. So, and our bank accounts are joint. And the reason for that is just, he's TDY or he's deployed, and I still can handle our household bills.
Right.
Also, rental agreements and such.
Yeah, and you need powers of attorney for something simple like if you lose your ID and you have to go to Deers without your spouse, you have to have a power of attorney for that, or some specific paperwork. So you want to make sure you have that, because that's just something simple that we could lose, and you really don't. You don't need to alert your spouse downrange if you lose your ID. It's something you can handle on your own, but you have to have prepared for it before.
Good point. Excellent.
Yeah.
Okay, and then next point, create an emergency plan and fund. So Krista had written in prior to today asking, we are stationed hundreds of miles from our closest family, and my husband is deploying soon. Should I move home near my family while he's gone? How do I decide? That is an excellent question, and I think something that many of us face each time. So how, ladies, do you handle that decision? What's some of your what do you look at when you make that decision?
You want to start?
I know a lot of people will go home because they're going to save money, because they'll live with their parents or whoever. And it's really just up to you. I'm more of the type of person that'll stay at the duty station, because that's where my support is. I'm on my own. I have my own family, and I stay. There's been a few times that I've went home and stayed, but my suggestion is to just stay where your duty station is and get your support through there. But I mean, if it's necessary that you need to leave and go, then do so. It's really up to you what you want to do.
You just have to know that if you leave, then you're probably giving up your housing. And so you would have to plan for that and getting back into housing. And many times after deployments, that might be when you're going to PCS after that. And so is it worth it to pack up everything, head home, pack up everything, come back, and then PCS? That just depends on what your schedule is and what's happening. I agree. I like staying on base. I feel like I'm more connected. I also feel like deployments change. And so, yes, he was supposed to come home this month, but now they're coming home 3 months later or earlier. And so now it's very hard. We had a lot of trouble when my husband's unit deployed, and spouses were trying to get their plane tickets to come back on kind of the same date. And that's just kind of impossible to figure that out when you're going to be back. So you do give up your housing, and although you may have a support system, and we talked about this earlier, you may have a support system at home. It is a little different. My family only tolerated me whining about my spouse missing for about 2 months, and then they were over it, where my Army family was much more supportive. Like, we get it. I know the 5th month is just as hard as the 2nd month, which is we still have 4 months to go. And so I found support more on base than I do out, because there are more people that understand it and are going through it. Right. And I also feel more connected to the unit. I can reach out to the rear D. I think a great alternative is take a month off and go on a vacation, plan for that, and go home. That way you can still keep your housing and still keep connected on both fronts.
Excellent. Excellent point. And so what kind of emergency plan and fund did you put in place before your deployments?
Before the deployment? Not much. Sorry.
Total honesty here.
I have an emergency plan in case something happens to my husband. I know where it is. I know where his little black book is and all that kind of stuff. Sort of like what you have, above the refrigerator and all. But emergency fund, just just try to save. Also, when he's gone, he could possibly be getting that extra money and just start packing it away instead of spending it.
So I had an emergency fund because, again, we have a house somewhere else. Yeah. And if there was an event where the paycheck for some reason didn't come through because of transition, or if I needed to travel, I put money aside for that as well. So if the car broke, there was a little bit of money. So we just stashed a little bit away every month prior to deployment. So in the event I had something that just I needed to handle quickly, I wasn't stressing over the money situation. There was one piece of it that, yes, the car is broken, but I don't have to stress about paying for it because we have this emergency fund tucked away. So for us, that was just kind of a security thing. And again, it came to where I didn't have to call my spouse downrange and go, I don't have $1,200 to fix the car. What do I do? I could just fix the car, tell him later. Yes, I had a little incident with the car. We took care of it. Not a big deal. And it didn't have to stress him out too. So just having that set aside.
So when you're on a tight budget, how do you stash money away for an emergency fund?
A little bit at a time. Every bit. You'll have to tell your story about how you did, but I just think it is conscious spending. Yeah. So you have to be very conscious. Do I need that cup of coffee, or can I put $5 away and start early? Sometimes we know these deployments are coming months and months in advance, so start early and kind of see where you're going to need that little extra fund.
Right. And it's a good idea to always have an emergency fund. I mean, government shutdowns, deployments. PCSs are expensive. There's only so much the military will reimburse or cover in the middle of a PCS, or when you get there and you're like, this or that's not covered. The plumbing isn't in the newly rented house, or the newly purchased house isn't as good as it originally thought, or whatever. I was a single mom for several years. Living paycheck to paycheck, and one thing that I did, and it's continued to be a habit, is I stash money. I stash all my dollar bills. I very rarely spend a dollar bill, and that's just a habit I've gotten into. And for my own mental, so I don't see, I've got this huge stash of dollar bills. I stash them in different places.
Oh my goodness.
And so, because it becomes tempting, And as long as you can remember, I'm getting older now, it's harder to remember all my stashes. But before the last PCS, we were going through everything before the Packers came. And in fact, they've discovered some. Thankfully, they were honest.
They were honest. Yes. Wait till I tell you about my elderly mother. I'll tell you later. That she used to do that too. I'm just saying that she used to do that too.
Upstairs, downstairs, yeah. But it's great because my husband, are you planning to leave me?
Yeah, right.
He hadn't realized until then that the extent, because I had forgotten some of this places. Yeah. And then now I also will stash fives and, different denominations.
But to 5 now.
Yeah. But it's just a habit I started early on. And I remember there was one time my car broke down. I'm a single mom. You don't have the spare cash. When you're living paycheck to paycheck, and let's be honest, the military doesn't pay that much. So that came in handy, and so I collected my dollar bills. I had $1,800.
Oh my gosh! Oh,
and it had taken me about 2 years to collect that, but every single dollar bill. I stashed away, and so I was able to repair the car, and then I stashed the rest away for another rainy day.
Oh, how funny.
So any other ideas?
Something that this is kind of off topic a little bit, but I always recommend that a spouse gets a recent copy of the LES prior to the deployment, because for any reason there is a mix-up in the bank. If you're like, the check didn't deposit, or where's our separation pay, or where's our hazard pay? If you don't know how to get to the LES, you can't fix it. And that then refers back to your spouse, and we'll talk about it later on in this podcast, or in this live, or in another show, about how you might not always be able to reach them.
Right.
And so you're going to have to take that LES into ACS or into command and say, this is what it normally is, and this isn't what hit my bank account. And they're going to be able to help you. If you don't know anything about the LES and you don't know where an LES is, or even the numbers to get to the LES, then that's really difficult, and that can really it can cause a problem for the family if the money didn't go to the bank account the way it should. And we talk about this a lot too. You might get overpaid or you might get underpaid. If you get paid over, you need to make sure you know why you're getting paid over, because it could be your separation pay or hazard duty, or it could be a mistake. And they will come back for it if it's a mistake. So you want to make sure that you're paying attention to the LES and what's going in and what's going out, and have a copy of it so you can reference it.
Yeah, good point. Good point. And we are nearing the end of our half hour together, but we do have more to cover. Next time we'll continue with deployment, and some of the other things we intend to cover are getting through the deployment. So your spouse is gone. What's next? And then finally reintegration, and that means when they come home. Or you'll also hear it as redeployment. It doesn't mean they're leaving again. It means they're coming home, and they're redeploying, which they're coming home. And for whatever reason, that was one of that stuck with me because that was so confusing to me. I'm like, you're leaving again? But no, it's means they're coming home. And so we'll cover that because they're home, but that doesn't mean the changes and you have to come to another new normal because things changed over those 9 or 12 months that they were gone. For them, for you, for your children, just your household structure. There's often, like you had said, PCSs, PCS after that. So we will be chatting about that. One thing back on the topic of preparing for deployment, self-care. Remember to take care of yourself. Yes. And it's like I always use this instance when you're on an airplane and the stewardess says if the pressure begins to drop and the masks come down, the oxygen masks come down, put yours on first before you then put it on to the person that's next to you. And so take care of yourself. It's not a matter of selfishness. It's a matter of if you're depleted and drained, you're just not going to be in a mental or spiritual state of mind, physical state of mind to be able to deal with all the challenges that come in gearing up for deployment. So take care of yourself. Take that bubble bath. Go hang out with some friends. Yeah, he's leaving. It's okay though. Hang out with your friends if that is the way that you feel restored. Go off alone, something. And then make sure that he is doing that. Let him go off by himself, or let him space out, or and let your children, they may disconnect, or they may become clingy to you or to him, but let them, and just be a support, but make sure you take care of yourself first. So with that said, that's it for today. It's been so much fun. Always
fun. Went fast.
Love our Hawaiian shirts.
Yeah. Really fast today.
Thank you so much for watching and commenting and liking this video. We still have a lot to cover, like I said, on the topic of deployment and reintegration. So we'll continue this series in the next broadcast. If we didn't get to a question today, we'll work to get them answered for you in our next AWN TableTalk. Do you have a topic that you would like us to cover in a future AWN TableTalk? Leave a comment below this video or email us at info@armywifenetwork.com and let us know. We'd love to hear from you. So if you have suggestions, if you just like this, if this is helpful to you, please let us know. It's always encouraging when we know that this is helping others. Wendy, Tracy, and I hope you'll join us again in 2 weeks, Friday, March 2nd, same time, right here on Facebook. In the meantime, AWN has lots of great information for military spouses, empowering blog posts from expert columnists, and military family members. We have bloggers in every walk of military life, spouses, children, veterans. So hop on over there and check it out. We have our popular Post with the Most series and new Army spouse information and checklist. and an extensive post directory. So hop over to armywifenetwork.com and check it out. And we would love it if you would like, comment, and share this video with your friends. It'll be uploaded into our Facebook feed, news feed shortly after this ends. So you can keep sharing it. Share it with someone that you know and love that has a spouse deploying soon. And AWN is your interactive empowerment for Army Wives by Army Wives. Thank you for tuning in. Have a great weekend.